Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Gurunath, uh, um, Dr. Bindu Madhava, and the Center for Cybersecurity at IISc Bangalore, and also the Electrical Engineering Department for giving me the opportunity to visit here and have a technical discussion with the center researchers here and also the professors. It's a great opportunity. IISc has been, the flagship institution in India. Always I admired when I was student, even visiting campus, it's like, going to a place where one day, you want to give a talk or things like that. Those kind of my dreams come true today. And in fact, I have given talk in the past also. But this is in that series, I really value this opportunity and also look forward to having more collaboration. And the same way, I welcome some of you when you come there, visit Iowa State. We would be happy to host you as well. So what I was thinking, I had slightly different talk than after conversation today morning. Then I had to adjust the talk a little bit so that it tailors better for the audience. So today I'm going to focus on cybersecurity, but also the flavor of cyber physical system security. That's where the interdisciplinary nature of computer scientists and electrical engineers come together because the grid is a cyber physical system. So in particular, we will be talking about a few use cases. Even before going there, what is the cyber attack surface for the grid infrastructure? The grid is being modernized, a lot of automation is happening, more cyber elements are being introduced into the grid for efficiency, performance, and renewable, and so on. But the attack surface also keeps increasing. So how do we deal with that issue? And as you all know, the grid is also a legacy infrastructure. It is having a lot of legacy component and also having newer components being integrated. So one needs to address the issue of cybersecurity in the presence of legacy component. So the next I will introduce a sort of conceptual architecture for cybersecurity for grid or any critical infrastructure that the life cycle model applies. With respect to that model, I will talk about few use cases of research. There are many other things can be done, but just to give a feel for it, so that it's an area wherein a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges still exist. One example use case is cybersecurity for wide area monitoring, protection, and control, WAMPAC, in particular AGC. Earlier, I was kind of not having those components, but to this morning, when I was talking to Professor Gurunath, he said India is an Indian grid now. The AGC is being implemented in some parts of the grid. In the past, it was not the case. So AGC is a very, very important application. I will briefly talk about how cyber attack can cause problem, how we can protect it. Then cyber security situational awareness is more about anomaly detection and getting a cyber situational awareness of the entire grid using AI, deep learning, various flavors of artificial intelligence. Again, the title says no. The cybersecurity in the age of AI. From a defender point of view, we can leverage AI for developing various solutions, whether it is for anomaly detection or attack mitigation and so on. But also the adversaries are going to utilize AI for developing most sophisticated attacks. And also even understanding the security posture of infrastructures. What are those substations? Where are they? What kind of communication protocols they use? What are the addresses, IP addresses they have, and so on? Those kind of information is easy to get nowadays. And the LLM and other kind of AI model can help the adversary to gain that knowledge, then develop attack vectors, orchestrate attack vectors, which are highly automated and more sophisticated. So it's a real fear. And we are seeing already, for example, developing a malware for some industrial control system, some LLMs, they can give some version of malware to begin with. The creating malware becomes much easier for the adversary. So you can kind of point out several use cases where wherein the adversary can benefit through the use of AI. But as a defender, asset owners, defender, researchers, we should be thinking one step ahead of the adversary. I think AI plays a huge role. I will show some use cases in the context of situational awareness and anomaly detection. The last one, some other use cases of attack, defense, moving target defense. Again, this could be applicable across multiple levels of the system. It could be at the substation level, it could be at the control center level, it could be at the communication network level, and so on. Then the new paradigm, zero trust, I will briefly motivate. The idea is not going into specific one particular topic, go into the depth of it, producing, presenting results and things like that. Typically in a conference presentation or academic presentation, that's what we would do, but rather I chose an approach. Let me give you a big picture overview about various things that are there where the opportunity exists for researchers, graduate students, and others to work on. Finally, the test beds, we have had quite a bit of discussion this morning. The role of test beds, what are the use cases, who are the users, how to architect the test beds, what are the different type of experiments can be conducted, and so on. So I'm going to briefly talk about CPS test bed, specifically for the security that we have built and what are the use cases we have done. I think that will be straight to you as well. Finally, conclusion. So this is a very cartoon picture of the grid, as you all know. Conventionally, power system was viewed as a physical system. Somewhere in 2012, there was a smart grid interoperability panel. They published a report from NIST. Smart grid is cyber physical system. So that's what it is illustrated. This picture is from one of our paper. It was published in IEEE, the proceedings of the IEEE, where cyber physical system security for the power grid. That's the title of the paper. What it simply shows is you have physical system, generation, transmission, distribution, then of course the load of different type. But what is not recognized in the past, there is a lot of communication that is happening, a lot of sensors, they are embedded inside the network, then communication of different level, local area, wide area, regional level, and so on. And they go to different control center, generation side, transmission, distribution control center, RTOs, and so on, regional control center, ISOs, independent system operators, abstract diagram to illustrate the energy market. They are all interacting through the communication network. Each one has a different time scale in terms of the application. Some are closed loop applications, some are open loop application, monitoring applications, some are control application, some are supervisory control applications, some are automated control application like AGC. It's an automated control application. There are other applications, supervisory nature, SCADA. Then of course, you have substations. I visited Professor Gulnath's lab. They have actual substation built in the lab. It's a very complex environment. So the digital substation, modern substation, various intelligent electronic devices and communication, they are all there. So it's a complex ecosystem with a lot of cyber physical interaction. That's the key point. And if somebody causes event, a malicious event on the cyber layer, it can have impact on the physical system. So this is the big picture overview. Then this is just to illustrate another cartoon-like diagram. You have physical system, cyber physical system at the ISO, RTO level, top tier, at the regional level, then at the utility level, utility control center, substation, that kind of thing. You have substation feeders and so on, the control center. Then you have at the lower level distribution grid where the renewable energy is being integrated, DER, microgrid, and your electric vehicle, all those kind of things. They are at the lower level. Again, there are physical assets and there are cyber assets, and they are intertwined here. Then, of course, across these layers from here, DER to distribution grid to transmission grid to regional level, they are all integrated as one grid. In India, also, we have the slogan, one grid, one nation, one grid. That it has been there maybe about 10 years or so. It's highly integrated, and so there are various things that can happen, like some of the attack vectors that are shown in various controllers, in various communication layer. The nature of those attacks can propagate, like the way we know in grid, cascading failure, same way the attack can propagate from one system to another system. So how do we sort of understand this overall ecosystem and develop security solution in a holistic manner? It's a challenging thing. It's not one research group is looking at all areas of research. Some researchers focus on renewable energy infrastructure, some are focusing on distribution, some are focusing on transmission. Some researchers, they focus on T&D kind of thing. So this is another important thing just to understand. From the cyber attack perspective, there were several attacks that have happened in the history, recent, maybe last 20 years or so. The very first one, this is what sort of highlights some major attacks that have happened on the energy or energy-like critical infrastructure or industrial control system. You can think of one is Stuxnet, that is a thing very famous one that we are all, I'm sure, familiar about. This was a sort of cyber weapon targeted towards uranium enrichment facility in Iran to cause a physical damage. This is the very first reported kinetic attack. Through cyber, you can break down the centrifuge. That was the one major attack. It was, I think, malware, malicious software is the most common in all those attacks. You can call it ransomware, you can call it some other ware. These are all primarily malicious software. The other important attack that happened actually on the grid, that is the Ukrainian grid attack, 2015. There is another attack, 2016. Two attacks have happened on the Ukrainian grid. This was launched by Russian hackers, Russian supported hackers. This was around the time in Russia annexed Crimea. That was the time.
ನಿನ್ಗೂ ವಯಸ್ಸಾಗಿದೆ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಲಿ.
So that will happen, but then this attack, we will show that use case, what are the different steps the adversary took, and what is the impact. In this case, there were close to 225,000 customers were without power for over nine hours or so. But in the process, they also corrupted the firmware of the substation, RTU and other things. It took so much additional effort to bring the system to a full restoration. So those things happened, and subsequently, you keep going there. Colonial pipeline attack that was in the eastern part of the United States, targeting natural gas pipeline. It was not the attack itself was not on the OT or control system. It was on the IT system, but there is a connectivity between IT system and OT system. Out of caution, they shut down the plant or the control system. Sometimes, the malware might have propagated from IT system to OT system. It took several days to clean up, to make sure there is no infection inside the OT side or the control system side. Then they brought the system back. In fact, they paid ransomware to restore the system back to normal state. So that was a well-known ransomware attack. So these attacks are sort of growing in number, also growing in sophistication. That is very important. And I also mentioned in the beginning, AI make this sophistication and the frequency accelerate at a much more accelerated pace. And if you are trying to defend the AI agents with a human response, that is not going to happen, because the AI is going to inject attack, whether it is a denial of service attacks. Even without AI bots, they can massively bombard your network. They are all highly automated. So automated solutions are extremely important, and those solutions, orchestrating different tools and the different techniques, they're kind of coordinated effort in defense needed. So this is just to show, I was even thinking about, maybe I should give a talk about digital substation, cybersecurity, anomaly detection. From that perspective, this slide, there are several attacks that really targeted on the substation environment, because modern substation, they are highly automated. IEC 61850 protocol, and through which, all those intelligent electronic devices, everything is connected. So The Ukrainian attack, of course, that was targeted on the substations and other parts of the network. There are many other things you see there. They were targeted on the substations. So this is again one conceptual diagram just to illustrate what is going on. From a state diagram perspective, we are all familiar about state diagram. Okay, a normal state, alert state, sort of compromised state, failure state. From a physical system perspective, when the system transition from a normal state to failure state, there is the actual failure has happened, or system has collapsed, or some kind of blackout or outage has happened. But the goal of any solution, the system has inherent redundancy, resiliency to keep the grid operational as much as possible, keeping it away from the failure state. But let us look at from a cyber physical perspective, how that state diagram will look like. That's what's shown here. So you have, as I said, the power grid is a cyber physical system, both the cyber subsystem and power subsystem in the normal state. In normal state, if some reconnaissance or some activity is going on, somebody is scanning you in a cyber network, trying to probe these things, the anomaly detection and other engines, they are picking up those signals, so something is going wrong. You could call it the sort of pre-alert state, where it's called cyber is in alert state. Nothing may really happen, but there is likely to happen. Whereas the power, everything is fine. Power system, there is no event of any kind. That is reconnaissance state. If there were appropriate prevention technique, okay, there are alerts are there. You shut down that portion of the network or reroute things or activate some control mechanisms to prevent those probing happening. There are various techniques possible. So then the system will go back to normal state. That's a good situation to be in. Let's say there are no mechanism to even detect alert. There are no anomaly detection or intrusion detection. Nobody knows what is going on. Then eventually the adversary will try to compromise the cyber layer. Okay, they got reconnaissance. There is something called cyber kill chain. There is series of steps they follow through, starting from reconnaissance to sort of vulnerability scanning and I mean, there's planning, execution, and so on. There are 5 or 6 steps. So the compromise happened. Cyber layer is compromised. So there could be mitigation. If there are mitigations, cyber mitigation, reroute the network or isolate the part of the system that had problem, then one could go to a normal state, both cyber and physical. So for example, the cyber layer, whichever infected component is taken out of the system, things like that. But it's not quite yet the physical system damage, but this compromise further taken to, let's say somebody is inside the system, they are going to actually launch the attack, going to corrupt the measurement or going to corrupt the control, just flipping a bit from 1 to 0. It will flip from opening a breaker to a closing a breaker or vice versa. If that is the case, when they try to do that action on multiple relays, then it will have a cumulative effect. Typically, real attacks, they are orchestrated, they are coordinated in coordinated attack. That means it's not just only one element compromise. That is not going to create any major impact because the grid itself has a lot of redundancy and resiliency. So they look for most critical element and also they want to have those things in multiple such things through a coordinated attack vector. When this cyber compromise, if it is that one is not mitigated, then the system goes to what is known as the failure state or unstable or critical state, wherein the power system itself experiences some, I mean, not collapse, some disturbance of some kind. It could lead to system, I mean, blackout or major outage and things like that. So then one has to create what is known as the mitigate, what do you call restoration and other resiliency, those things come into play. So it kind of gives you a big picture wherein prevention techniques, then cyber mitigation, cyber physical mitigation, these are all some solutions one can think of when you think about this application. The other important thing is I'm trying to convey some basic concept to really understand, oh, cyber physical system, it's not just a magic, somebody can do things right away. There are various steps they have to do it in order to create any meaningful attack. So if you look at this sort of sequence of steps they have to do it, in order to create a physical damage to a system, to make some load unserved, load loss, or even no equipment failure. You change the set point to some equipment generators or transformer, causing the generators to get damaged. Like there was a attack, not attack, it is more like a staged demonstration by Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Energy in the United States much before Stuxnet to show the world through cyber attack you can create a kinetic effect. Basically, they had a diesel generator. Through cyber element, they manipulated the torque and made it to sort of exert back and forth. Eventually, they exploded it within maybe few minutes or few tens of seconds. So it exploded, but it was mostly staged. But the actual event was through cyber manipulation, making this thing to exert physical stress to cause the generator malfunction. And many of you know, if those things are done for big generators, CPRI people are here, big generate their tens of millions of dollars equipment, and if they are damaged, it is very, very hard to replace. It will take time because there are not many generators are available. You need to have a railway network to bring those generators to the place to restore. It's not about the dollars or the financial aspect, but it's there is a physical challenges or logistical challenges to restore the system. So physical damages could be there. There could be blackout, load rejection, equipment damage, economic impact, or any system reliability, frequency, voltage, and other kind of violations. All those things are possible depending upon what is the impact for the adversary. But the point is attacks. They are targeted cyber layer. There are different type of attacks, denial of service, malware, data integrity, false data injection, and so on. But predominantly DOS attack or timing attack, those are one type. Another is no false data injection attack, manipulating the measurement, things like that. But the other type of attacks are more like replay attack. Adversary cannot see what the actual data that is being exchanged because the channel is encrypted. If it is encrypted, they don't know what to change. So, but they can keep replaying the same stale packet again and again. Those replay attacks are possible. Timing attack, because this field is very, very sensitive to timing because there are control loops. Each control loops have certain strict timing constraints like protection. Those things are in terms of tens of milliseconds, whereas AGC, those applications in terms of few seconds. So depending upon the control loops, you can perturb the timing of those measurement and control. It will have impact on the underlying system operation. Those are timing attacks. So the point here is these attacks are targeted towards some of the cyber elements that are part of your infrastructure. It could be energy management system, DMS. Those are the control center, phasor measurement relays, IED. Those are all in the substation. They could be compromised, or the network, wide area network or other networks, routers, gateways, protocols, different protocols like Modbus, DMP3 or IEC 61850. So those are the things they have to have a foothold to inject this attack. That in turn, that's what I said, the cyber compromise doesn't mean that the grid is going to collapse. Using those things, they have to go on to have actual manipulation of related to generation or protection or even state estimation. Any of those applications, just roughly it is classified generation related, transmission related, distribution related. That is what will lead to actual impact. So the lesson here is, okay, how do we protect this? And also how do we protect this? So that the adversary doesn't go from left to right as much as possible. So I think it's not just magically, okay, attack happened, there is going to be a blackout. No, there are various things have to fall in place, and the system is also the system typically has a lot of redundancy and also additional reserves and extra capacity. They can withstand some level of attacks, but when it goes beyond, then it becomes a real disturbance. So this is just a high level picture to show what is the probability of the cyber event happening. This from a risk assessment perspective, what is the likelihood? and what would be the consequence of that particular event. Likelihood of the event and its consequence, when you multiply those two things, you get risk. Systematically, you analyze the risk. But the point here is there are conventional wisdom. Somebody know there are different type of people, actors, threat actors, nation state, to all the way script kiddies. Script kiddies are novice. They were trying to do something. They can scan, but they can't do a whole lot. They don't have a whole lot of knowledge and not resources. Say on the other hand, when you think about nation state, they have a lot of resources, a lot of expertise. They are not in rush. They are called advanced persistent threat APT. That means they take their own time. They look for most opportune time to really launch an attack. So the probability of nation state attack happening is very low likelihood. But if it happens, the consequences will be very huge actually. On the other hand, you see this simple attacker, they're more often like probing these things, more often it happens, but the consequences very little. So you can kind of have a mental map of who are the actors, what is the likelihood, what is the consequences. The idea here is wherever there is a deep red, those are high risk scenarios. We don't want the system to have any high risk scenario. So this kind of things gives you a opportunity to analyze the risk. And of course, whatever you see here, somewhere in between, those are like ransomware people or some competitors or some other people, somewhere in between. They are not quite advanced, but at the same time, they are not like just the random attackers. So the important point here is this diagram. It's a conceptual diagram, the likelihood versus consequence, but this can help to do a risk assessment. Based on that, one can make security investment, where to go on invest in security. You invest in substation 1 or substation 10 or some other part of the network. What is the type of investments? Instead of randomly going and upgrading your infrastructure with the cybersecurity, you do a risk-driven cybersecurity investment. This is part of the system planning. I have a whole presentation about that topic itself, but the message here is risk assessment. Risk assessment is a very, very fundamental thing. That is even before going and detecting attack, all the things. Let's assess the risk. Who are the threat actors going to target our system? What is our security posture of our system? So how, if something is compromised, what would be the consequence? When you put all this thing, likelihood times consequence, you get risk, and you mitigate all those high risks through suitable security. So this slide just to show the challenge with cyber security for the grid. Grid is a complex system and is a control system. It's not IT system. Control system means there are governing principles by physics and control laws. There are timing property. There are safety properties. That is what makes it different from regular IT system. So the solutions have to adhere to certain principles the control system operates. Of course, the control system, they are more deterministic as opposed to IT system. There is a lot of variation in communication pattern. But deterministic pattern also is a bad thing from a cybersecurity perspective, because the adversary can infer precisely who is talking to whom, what is the nature of the communication. It's very deterministic. They can easily create attack vector in a OT environment. So the whole point is legacy infrastructure, poor patch management, very old technologies. They are not quite mature enough to deal with the modern warfare, because the adversary have all those tools at their disposal, but the defender don't have the latest technology throughout the grid. Of course, some part of the grid is being modernized, the others are still legacy. So that is a challenge by itself. Then so many people think, oh, channel is encrypted, the system is secure. Encryption is just one part of security. Security is much bigger. So as I said, you can create timing attack, denial of service attack, DOS attack, even without knowing what is the packet, what is the measurement, what is the control. So even encrypted channels can be attacked. Of course, insider threat, that is very important. Somebody is insider, even if it is encrypted, they can do anything. Then the threat landscape itself is evolving. As we see, there are geopolitical reasons and other reasons. The threat landscape keep evolving. There are more malwares when AI and other things are disrupting this whole ecosystem. So that's why it is very important. One needs to think about solutions, not just IT security, beyond IT security. That's where cyber physical system security, physics aware solutions, understanding the underlying physics into your solution, whether it's anomaly detection, mitigation. I was talking to Professor Das, developing no resiliency, system resiliency. Those are all cyber physical flavor. So just keep going. So this is a quick slide in a cyber security context. Okay, there are, in my view, smart grid or any systems security or any critical infrastructure security. It is basically a sort of synergy of multiple things. They can come in together. It's not like, oh, you need to have everything CPS security. No, it's not like that. So you can have information security solutions like encryption. They are definitely useful, but one needs to rightly engineer that encryption. You can't have very high-end encryption on a low-end device. So encryption, authentication, like all those things, confidentiality, integrity, availability, non-repudiation, authentication, all those principles apply. So there's information security solutions applicable at appropriate places in the grid. Similarly, infrastructure security, I want to have a firewall, network segmentation, intrusion prevention system, some protocol security related. All those things are equally applicable. Again, it has to be appropriately chosen what is needed, what is not needed. Then the third one is the cyber physical system security. All those control application like the diagram I showed you earlier. Okay, you have a cyber layer, the attacker is there, cyber layer, control layer, then physical impact. This falls into the control layer where all those energy management system, distribution management system, DER management system, those applications themselves have to be protected. Those applications have to be empowered or designed to deal with those things. Suppose bad data is coming to your state estimation algorithm. Your communication protocol will say packet is coming from a valid user and looks like a normal packet, but who is going to understand the semantics of those data? It is not your Microsoft Windows operating system or Cisco router. They are not going to do it. It's just a packet they are transporting. What is going to understand is your energy management system software. That is going to understand the semantics. So all semantic related analysis related to cybersecurity has to happen at the control system layer or cyber physical system layer. So then of course you have physical security, fencing, electronic camera, surveillance, all those things. That is equally important. But the point is the security for this infrastructure is basically a collection of all those things. But what is the right mix and match? Because if you sort of put all those band-aid everywhere, then the system become overly complicated, it's not manageable, and it will introduce a lot of overheads. So it is a engineering design by itself. You have a lot of solutions. What combinations can give the best robust security is also very important. So let me go on. So this is the important diagram. So far, I just introduced, motivated what is the attack surface and looking at cyber physical system perspective. We have to think beyond IT security. This is the sort of life cycle security model from an attacker perspective. So we want to, as a defender, mimicking attacker going to do various things. So deter the attack. The attack deterrence is very important, but they are not very effective. Like nuclear deterrence, those kind of policies are there between nations, bilateral agreement, nuclear treaty, things like that. No first use kind of thing. That won't work here because there is no such policies exist between countries. But some nation like United States and Russia, they signed, we won't attack your critical infrastructure, you should not do it. There is a list of those two lists exchanged between those nations. But whether they really honor it or not, it's up in the air actually. So, but the point here is the adversaries are not just the nation state. There are hackers, there are terrorists, there are other people. They don't necessarily follow any of those, any of those rules of engagement. So we are talking about much broader adversaries. So deterrence is pretty much a hopeless situation, many cases. So what you go and do is attack prevention. Attack prevention itself has two components. One is the cyber security planning. That is where now the risk assessment comes. Okay, you understand your risk. What is the probability of something, some adversary exploiting your system, and what would be the consequence? You do a risk assessment and make a security investment to mitigate those risks. Those are basically cyber security planning. Every year this process has to be done, or things like that, or whenever there is changing condition in the system or in the threat landscape or geopolitical thing, it has to be again reassessed. That is more system planning sense. Then the other one is more online attack prevention techniques. Okay, you have firewall, you have network segmentation, you have encryption, you have authentication, you have access control. All the cybersecurity technology that we mostly know about, they all fit into online techniques to prevent attacks. As you know, not every attack is preventable. That's why we have cyber attacks, many reported, because there is something called zero-day exploit. Some attacks that are not known yet, only the adversary knows, or some people, researchers in a lab, they are doing some experiment lab, they are building even here at the cybersecurity center. When they do vulnerability assessment, they discover some new vulnerability which is not discovered before. Those are called zero-day exploit. As a responsible researchers, what we do, we report to the vendor saying that we discovered such and such vulnerability. Please take necessary action. That means they will build a patch and so on. Or additional step, you may report to the CERT, ICS CERT, Computer Emergency Response Team. India has a CERT as well. So in a responsible way. But attacker, they won't do like that. Oh, I have a zero-day exploit. I'm going to exploit the system. So that's where the attack, not every attack is preventable. In fact, many attacks, including the Stuxnet and the Ukrainian attack, zero-day exploits were involved in that actually. Then that means not every attack is preventable. We should be able to detect attacks when the system is in operation. That's where the intrusion detection system that comes into play, but they are based on known signatures. Anything that is new, they can't detect those attacks. So, even when we say prevention, not every known attack is preventable. If your system is not having up-to-date patch and if your system doesn't have a proper security mechanism, even known attacks, it will let it go. So, but there, through intrusion detection, it may be preventable. But many, intrusion detection systems are based on known signatures. They can't detect zero-day exploits. That's where anomaly detection. That's where machine learning becomes a very powerful tool. In the past, people have used statistical tools to analyze behavioral aspect of the protocol, user, and other things, then detect anomalies beyond the signature based. Sometimes they tend to have a large, high false positive and false negative. Although they are sophisticated, the statistical analysis, but they tend to have high false positive. But nowadays, the advent of AI, you have so many models, AI model, they give very high detection accuracy. We have done a lot of research in this area. You have a data set with all kinds of data, normal data, attack data, fault data, combination of various things, very comprehensive data set. If you give it, those model get trained. It could be labeled data set, that is better. If it is not labeled, then it can do some sort of clustering. So they achieve high detection accurate, especially if it is supervised learning labeled data set. If the anomaly detection is able to pinpoint out what is the type of attack, it is a data integrity attack or DOS attack or some other man in the middle attack. If it is able to pinpoint out, it helps the mitigation because the response mitigation action depends on the type of attack. If it is fault, the response has to be completely different from malicious attack. So that's why a lot of those classifiers, they have to be multi-classifier as opposed to binary classifier. If it is binary, normal, abnormal, that gives some idea, but not a whole lot. So that's where the mitigation also come into play. AI can play a huge role in mitigation. In fact, if we have a data set, based on the data set, what would have been the response? You can build a model, data-driven model, based on that, you can, you don't use the measurement anymore. I will show you an example that can provide what action needs to be done. So it's kind of a data-driven model, but many times physics driven model-based response also available. That is the sort of little bit prior art, but nowadays people are looking at a data-driven and a combination of data-driven and model-driven. Those mitigation strategies. Then many other things, resilience, mitigation and resilience, they are closely related. Resilience is to keep the system operational. Regaining operational state as much as possible. If it is not, it is ability to self-heal and sustain with the minimal degradation as much as possible. Various tricks can be done. One could, kind of reroute the flows, power flows, or you can shift the generation, you can shed load, you can do controlled islanding, all kinds of things in a power system restoration, or when the contingency happen, real-time contingency analysis. They do all those things, everything applicable. Only thing is they are triggered by cyber event versus physical event. Depending upon that, the response action will be slightly different. And also it has to be coordinated. When you say resilience, coordinator, that means joint, joint response, both from a cyber resilience and system physical resilience. You want to keep your cyber system also to be resilient. So there is a sort of co-optimization. Some people look at from a mathematical perspective, but from engineering point of view also, joint way of doing is important. The last one is, I think, attack attribution or attack forensics. Who attacked, what happened, what are the traces that are there in the system, going and doing forensic analysis. So the idea is we can learn something. We can learn something from it. At the same time, we also trace back to the origin where it came from, so that we can, punish the perpetrators or take some offensive actions and things like that. But problem is, attack attribution is not easy, because to do attack attribution, the system has to have state information, where the attack came from, where it originated. Somewhere, no, the system has to keep track of the packets flowing and other things. Most of the internet or wide area network and other things, they are stateless. So it is very hard to attribute where it came from. The adversary, they are not going to use their IP address as it is. They will spoof their source address to be the address of somebody else, some legitimate user. And they will also use multiple levels of indirection so that they can't be traced back. So these are the tricks they do it. That's why attack attribution is very hard. But attack attribution also can serve as a powerful deterrence. If we say, like, for example, my home is what do we call security protected. If you put a sign outside your home, the burglar will think twice. Okay, this security alarm is there in this home. Or you go to a building, there is this. This facility is monitored by camera, things like that. So attack attribution, the adversary will think the attribution capability is there. We will be caught, and there will be a sort of repercussion to that action. So it could serve as a forensic analysis, but also it can serve as a deterrence to some extent. But building attribution is very hard. In the literature, it's sort of less understood, even in the internet context as a critical infrastructure, but in the grid context, even less. Again, AI can play a huge role in forensic analysis and figuring out from the traces and logs who are the attackers, where it came from, and so on. So there are a lot of things are here. There are various mathematical, scientific things like game theory. We were talking about this morning. Vivek, you presented something using game theory, machine learning, reinforcement learning. All those things, they play a huge role in building security solutions. Same thing from your enabling technology perspective. You have various things. Synchro phases, okay, they are newer platform, likely to be secure. They are much more high resolution. Can that be used? There was measurement used for, say, estimation or other applications beyond now the conventional data, conventional SCADA, because they are time synchronized and highly accurate, and they are newer, supposed to have security features. cloud for various analytics, software-defined networking, if you want to program your network with the security features inside the network, as opposed to only at the edges or the control center, one could do. Of course, data sets, models, they are critical if you want to train any machine learning or other kind of models, data sets. So anyway, so there are whole lot of things that can be done. In this case, I'm going to sort of talk about some of the things. We haven't done any work on deterrence. Of course, deterrence also includes not just this treaty and policy agreements. It is also somebody having offensive capabilities. There are offensive tools they have. If those offensive tools are there, just like a nuclear weapon, some country has a, even small country, if it has a nuclear weapon, that is a huge deterrence actually. So same way, there are offensive capabilities, offensive cybersecurity tools. A lot of companies, not a lot of companies, a lot of nations, they build it so that it serves a deterrence for them. Others cannot target. So that is also an important thing. But we have done a lot of work in prevention, detection, mitigation, and resilience. That's where we focus. I'm going to give you some idea about a few things without going into detail, but we have series of papers. One way I'm going to talk about anomaly detection and attack mitigations. So you have sort of cyber physical anomaly detection plus associated attack mitigation. That together we call it attack resiliency. It's not a perfect definition. IEEE has its own definition of resiliency from a physical perspective. This is one way to look at it. Resiliency itself can be mixed up with mitigation, but this is the thing. So the machine learning based ADS and other things, whether it is anomaly, I'm going to show some examples. You will see shortly. Let's see. So to illustrate this concept, especially when you are thinking about anomaly detection and mitigation, I'm leaving this attack prevention technologies like risk assessment, all those things. We have used game theory, the kind of modeling, because sort of quantifying the probability of event is very hard because human aspect is involved. So modeling a threat or human behavior is very, very hard. So that's where the game theory is used. But here, when it comes to cyber physical system, anomaly detection, attack mitigation perspective, you have abstract model. In fact, this concept is articulated in the paper, this paper. So what it says is you have a cyber system, you have physical system, there are sensor measurements are going, then some decision control actions, whether it is the EMS or DMS, wherever it is, or within the substation, doesn't matter. It is a control loop in an abstract way. It makes some decision, sends the control command, then actuation happens, this loop keeps happening. So the point here is the adversary can target the sensors or sensing signals or the control signals. The attacks could be of any kind, integrity, DOS, and other timing, and so on. So when you have this thing, one way to look at it, I have this energy management system, or I have the DMS, or I have the substation automation system. Within that environment, what are those control loops? I want to map those control loop into this architecture. Okay, this is the cyber, this is the physical, these are the measurement, these are the control, these are the attack vectors on this side, these are the attack vector on that side. Then what would be the consequence? Then how do we go about detecting and mitigating? That way you make that security, that particular control application secure. Of course, if you think about it, you're making all those application part of the EMS, that way you're building secure version of EMS that has the sort of what you call semantic flavor beyond not just the IT security. So that's the main idea. So one example, as I said, AGC, it is being implemented in Indian grid context, but in the United States it has been there. So it is one of the critical EMS function. Its job is to maintain, primary job is to maintain frequency at 60 hertz in the United States. In India, it is a 50 hertz. So the idea is to match the demand and supply. Generation and the load, they have to match. If they are matching, it is 60 hertz. You can understand that through this simple cartoon picture. This is a scale. If supply exceeds the demand, then the frequency will shoot up beyond 60 hertz. On the other hand, if load is excess, then generation, the frequency will dip. So it is shift back and forth. Then there are losses. Then you through tie line between utilities buying and selling power. So this is locally generated, then purchased together. That is supply. Similarly, from the demand side, losses, load, and other things they are considered. So the frequency maintain exchange value between the tie line, whatever that is agreed upon, maintain the frequency at 60 hertz. Those are the things. The third one is economic operation. Suppose more generation is needed, buy from the least bidder. You don't buy from the most expensive or generator. So the idea is economic dispatch is also a secondary function for the AGC. Frequency control itself happen at two levels. One is at the plant level, where the governor reacts first away. That's the primary control. This is the secondary control at the wide area at the system level. That's happened. The moment I say wide area, that means it involves wide area communication. The wide area communication means it's susceptible to attack. The measurement and control, they go through the wide area communication channel. So the frequency band, NERC has certain criteria. It's a very well studied problem and implemented. There are guard band around the 60 hertz. I think 50.4 or so, 59.6 and 60.4, things like that. That is the first guard band. Then the next guard band, there are three guard bands. So within that first guard band, the penalty is not there, even if there is a little deviation. The moment it goes out of the first guard band, there will be a penalty because they want to strictly control the frequency. Frequency deviates within the interconnection. What will happen? Then the under frequency relays will trip or over frequency relay will trip. These protection elements is a very complicated thing. They will lead to cascading outage. It's strictly regulated. There are penalty. It's not like, oh, just to draw power. No, that's not allowed. So those frequency band is there. So you can look at it. There is in the United States, there are something called balancing authorities, 106 or so. Those yellow circles, those are called balancing authorities. The balancing authority is responsible for balancing supply and demand. It's not necessarily utility. Sometimes the utility, it's a given utility may be a balancing authority. Sometimes group of utilities fall under one balancing authority. So typically many utilities fall under one balancing authority. So that is how then each one of those balancing authority talk to others, neighboring balancing authorities. Collectively, they ensure frequency within each interconnection, eastern interconnection, western interconnection, ERCOT. These are three major interconnection. Within each one of them, it is a synchronous grid operation. 60 hertz is maintained, and AGC is playing very important role in terms of AGC time scale. Every 4 seconds, the time scale at which AGC closed loop is 4 seconds. That is what it is done. The AGC also can be, if something goes wrong, it can be turned to manual mode. It is by design, it's automated loop, because every 4 seconds, human operator cannot make a decision. It is an automated loop. If something really goes wrong, the manual mode can be turned on. That's how those EMS are built. So what you do is, without going into too much technical detail, but a very high level understanding, the AGC algorithm, that is part of the EMS, energy management system, at the control center, typically at the transmission control center or at the regional control center, ISOs. So what it does is two type of measurement that are coming. This is running within the balancing authority. So you have frequency measurements that are coming. Then tie line flow. There are tie line flow between neighboring utilities. Multiple tie line flows will be there. Multiple frequency measurements are. They are all coming. The frequency measurement sensors that are from the substations. So you have what is known as AGC algorithm. So these measurement, before getting into the attack itself, normal operation, this is what it does. It computes what is known as ACE, area control error. A simple formula, ACE equal to what is the delta P? Delta P plus some weighted factor delta F. So net power flow and the net delta change in frequency. Essentially what it says is the nominal frequency is 60 hertz. The current measured frequency, this delta F basically shows the difference. Similarly, what is the scheduled flow between the tie line? What is the actual flow? Currently, what is the flow? Suppose, let's say the delta P is 0 and delta F is 0. That means it's operating at 60 hertz. The scheduled exchange is exactly the actual flow is same as scheduled exchange. Both the quantity is 0, then the ACE will be 0. If ACE is 0, everything is fine. It is operating at 60 hertz. No need to do anything. On the other hand, if this thing goes into positive or negative ACE value, the area control error, there is an error that will make this generator to ramp up or ramp down. Yeah. So that is the two commands it uses, and it knows the group of generators that are part of its control area, and each one of those generators have participation factor, how much they are willing to participate, what is their current capacity, and also what is their the cost of generation, those information available, then it will go and pick up those most optimal generators to sort of ramp up, for example, similarly for ramp down. So that's how it maintains the frequency and also the economic dispatch. So that is the thing, and it keeps going this one every 4 seconds. Yeah, attacker, stealthy attacker. We have a paper published in 2014. This is about model-based attack detection and mitigation for AGC. So what it does is the attacker, they can manipulate the tie line flow and frequency measurement. If they just do one thing, easily that can be detected by simple false data injection, bad data injection. It doesn't look accurate. So stealthy adversary, they will systematically change those two things. They correspond to each other. If that is the case, that's what modify the tie line frequency measurement that will lead to unnecessarily ramping up or unnecessarily ramping down. Whenever it has to be ramped out, it may end up ramping down or vice versa, causing further oscillation in the frequency, leading to the relay stripping and other effects. So that is the impact. So how do we go about detecting? How do you go about mitigating? That is important research, especially for this. So this is, I have several charts, but just one chart to illustrate. See, this is a load. This is the this is the load. There was a perceived load. If there was no attack, everything is fine. Then that is how the AGC would have perceived the 60 hertz. I kind of removed the slides. I should have put a slide on the load. What is the perceived load versus what is the actual load? The perceived load to be higher or lower. That is by manipulating the measurement. That's what the attacker will do. For that reason, for example, the frequency, the AGC algorithm would have reacted. The actual load, let's see, this is a system frequency. This is the actual load. Actual load, based on that, the generation was matched. The frequency is kept at 60 hertz. Suppose there are different types of attacks, scaling, ramping, and replay attack. Scaling and ramping attack, those are more like a false data injection attack. You change the tie line measurements and other measurement as if slowly it is increasing. Ramping is more like a staircase kind of signals. So when these things happen, in one case, the perceived load to be higher. Perceived load to be higher, that's what the system says. Then what the generator will do, okay, ramp up. Unnecessarily it is ramping up. Actually, there is no perceived load is only this. It is manipulated to be this. This unnecessarily ramping, the frequency keeps going up unnecessarily. Similarly, in another case, the perceived load to be lower than the actual load, then the system is unnecessarily ramping down, right? So the ramp down causes the frequency goes down. So these are the kind of ways they can do it. The way to do attack resilient control, as I illustrated in a simple way, attack resilience is model-based detection plus the mitigation, that kind of flavor. So at the control center, this application is running. This application has to have the ability to detect, also mitigate. So similarly, from the actuation signal, that has to happen. Whenever this measurement goes, it has to verify whether it is correct measurement or not. So the model, so this is what the anomaly detection is here. It is not rule-based anomaly detection. It's a kind of based on the physics and the property of the system. So you need some information to build that model. Here we use real-time load forecast. They are pretty accurate. Real-time load forecast, they have 95% or so accuracy. They are not 100%, but pretty accurate. So using real-time load forecast, okay, this is the load. Every 5 seconds or every few minutes, you take that, you build what is known as ACE value based on the load forecast. You have the current generation now. This is the load forecast. Let's build what is the ACE value, ACE forecasted ACE. Then the real measurement style and frequency measurement, like I showed in the previous flow chart, they come, you measure ACE actual based on the measurement. ACE real actually, ACE real and ACE forecast. This real goes through some series of tests. One is now more like a statistical, whether it is falling within the standard deviation. If that is falling within standard, it looks like it's correct. Let's let it go. The second one is more temporal characterization. Does it changes at a rate that is acceptable or not acceptable? If it is all of a sudden swinging back and forth, the ACE value, in a physical system, it cannot happen because physical system has inertia. Of course, when you have renewable, those are low inertia thing, but rotating machinery and all, they have inertia. All of a sudden, it cannot change rapidly. There is something is wrong. So rate of change, this temporal characterization, this is the standard deviation in terms of the bound. These are two rules. Of course, you can define many such rules to see whether this is in compliance with this. If this is following this compliance, it's more or less, it's not exact value. If it is exact value, then it should not be correct. So somewhere in that vicinity, it is passing that rule, then it is correct. That is how you go and check, is it anomaly based on the passing of those rules. If it is not anomaly, use the real measurement as it is, ACE value to ramp up or ramp down the generation. On the other hand, if any one of those tests fail, that means the adversary playing with the digital parameters, the measurements, it is not reflecting the ground truth. If that is the case, so fall back to the ACF. That is the way you operate. This is the model-based detection and mitigation for AGC. Of course, you can sort of utilize this model for other cases. We have built several papers actually following this wide area protection. Same thing, model-based detection and mitigation, wide area damping control, detection and mitigation, somewhat similar paradigm. But recent years we are using a lot more machine learning based as opposed to simple statistical rules. Real machine learning feed all those ACE values, past ACE value, different measurements, and based on those much more accurate detections. Because this was like 2014 or something. 14. Yeah, this was the outcome of that thing in terms of the effect. The frequency is there just to scale for scaling attack without mitigation. The scaling attack, the frequency deviation keeps going corresponding to the perceived load to be higher. So it is keep ramping up. So frequency keeps shifting up. With the mitigation, it will keep it pretty close to 60. It's not quite 60 because it's only model based on the forecast. It has its own inaccuracy. So it's around 60, but it's not accurate. So that is better than for deviating too much. So let me see with respect to time. We will take quickly. I will run through. AI is an important tool. We use anomaly detection. This is to show. I mean, it could be applied to bulk power system or DER. This was one of the project where we did it. So you have a lot of DERs. There are inverters, solar, wind, and so on. Then you have there could be microgrid storage controllers as well. These are edge devices. They are there. They collect these gateways. They send over the communication. They go to the distribution control center, and also they go to the cloud. The cloud is part of the distribution control environment where all those information comes. They do various monitoring and analysis. Probably they don't control from the cloud point of view, but monitoring definitely happens. The DER management system, that is at the distribution control center, that's where the actual control of the grid, like DE monitoring and control happens. So the idea here is, okay, let's try to detect any malicious activities in the communication at the local level. So the idea is we want to have end-to-end cybersecurity situational awareness for the DR network, because DR network is sort of built, the attack surface is huge. It's not a utility owned, some DRs are utility owned, others are community owned solar, wind. There are other things, rooftop solar. Not everything has security protection like the utility typically has. So the attack surface is huge. So how do you secure it? That's where, okay, let's put anomaly detection here. Then let also build alert correlation at the control center. So each one of them, they detect anomalies at that level. If there are any anomalous activities, then those alerts are sent over the communication network to the cloud. At the cloud, temporal and spatial correlation of alert happens again using machine learning. In both cases, we have used machine learning to detect anomalous behavior, then for the alert correlation. Then those two are put together to get a cyber security situational awareness. Then this alert correlation, it can also request back additional data, additional information, so that to clarify this the prediction basically. So the idea is you connect the dot. It looks like, oh, there's some activity there, some activity there. When you put them together, looks like, oh, it is a distributed denial of service attack, or it is a probing happening across multiple machines, or things like that, or multiple inverters. So machine learning definitely is a very powerful thing for anomaly detection. So this is a typical workflow that is followed in machine learning based anomaly detection, like as you all know. Yeah, data balancing, feature extraction, normalization, and things like that using different machine learning algorithm. You sort of train the model, you test the model, and implement the classification itself, normal attack, even within the attack, what type of attack, those kind of things. So this is again another important point is where do you get the data to train this model? That's where we have a test bed within which we can create synthetic data set. Using the synthetic data sets, you train the model, you test the model. So some of the things, device attack, remote attestation, scanning, different type of attacks. So you see original data set, then augmented data set. So what we did is there are well-known cybersecurity data sets are available. There is a organization, Canadian Cybersecurity Research Institute. They have a lot of test beds of different kind for cyber physical system. They create data sets. You can go and download. Unfortunately, they don't have data sets for distributed energy resources or anything, but they have IT data sets with cloud connectivity, TCP, IP, all those things.
Canadian cybersecurity
Research Institute, yeah. So what we did is we took the data set as a base, then we generated a lot of DR specific use traffic patterns within our data set. Then the original data set from Canadian Research Institution is augmented. That is IT data set is augmented with OT data set from our lab. That is the new data set that we created. That is what utilized to train the model and test. And this is just to show different thing and the device attack, scanning, and other attacks that were there, and some data balancing, things like that. Some other features, IT specific features that is from the original thing. Then how do you kind of augment those things? There are some standard procedure that is there. That's what we followed. These are some of the OT specific things that is coming from our test bed. But when you look at the features, all those things as part of the data set, it's a one data set after that augmentation was done. So this is more like a kind of heat map to see the correlation among the features. You don't want to have too many features and spurious features. If there is a strong correlation, you don't want to have all of them. So from 84 ITOT features, they were reduced to 42 features, basically 50% reduction. That's what we use to train the model and test. Here what you see is training and testing accuracy, pretty high accuracy for naive Bayes, decision tree, random forest. So I think decision tree gives a really good accuracy than artificial neural network. Those two classifiers, they achieve high detection accuracy. In terms of latency, detection time, and things like that. So if you look at the training time, artificial neural network, it takes a lot of time to train, but actual testing, it didn't take that much time. So what you really care about is the testing time from a latency perspective, not for training time. So, so ANN happens to be the ANN and DT, decision tree, they are really good classifiers for this case. Same thing we did for, I think that was for DNP3, no, Modbus, this is for DNP3. Same, we have a capability to generate OT DNP3 dataset augmented with the IT dataset. Exactly same thing, but the actual features are somewhat specific to DNP3 protocol payload. See, if you look at IT data sets, they won't give information about payload. The payload is specific to the application. So they will only say what is the packet length, what is the source address, destination, more header information. The payload is specific to the application protocol. That's where the OT features come. So again, similar results with different algorithms compared, and I think artificial neural network decision trees, they achieve high detection accuracy. Similarly, the latency also, you want a really low latency. I think decision tree does very well. Artificial neural network also does well. This one is to show the alert correlation. Once these things, so suppose you have some part of the network, DR network, DNP3 is used, some other part, suspect Modbus is used. You can you install appropriate anomaly detection in each one of them. Then you have alert correlation. It doesn't care whether you have ADS of this kind. So it is sort of independent of what protocol you use. So the alert correlation engine that is run here, alert normalization, alert aggregation, those things, alert confidence, those things happening at the sensor itself, the ADS itself. The ADS is then within that edge device, you have some capability like this. Then those alerts, they are sent over an encrypted channel to the cloud. That is where similarity-based scenario correlation, statistical-based incident correlation, and other kind of correlation. There are some correlation when you do what is the window within which this correlation happens. That is important because your temporal correlation, spatial correlation when you do. This is what happens at the end. Some kind of dashboard at the control center you displayed. This is the DER management system. That means the distribution control center. Same concept applies to the transmission substation control center, but we didn't actually apply this methodology there yet. So this is to show what is alert correlation. If you see like this, so there is one sensor says ADS signature yes, another one says, source of attack this, source of attack this, destination this, then you group these two things. You see here, source is here, there is a different destination. That means each one of them, like you see, 100 source 02, 100 03, 100.4. If it is there, all three are 100. What means three different people are saying, oh, I've seen 100, I'm being targeted. Another person saying I'm being targeted by 100. Basically, the alert correlation will get that big picture. Okay, there is an attacker scanning multiple devices. That is a scanning attack. So on the other hand, this one, dot 2, dot 3, dot 4, those are different sources. They are targeting dot 5. That basically shows this is more like a distributed denial of service attack, multiple agent targeting on target. So that is a distributed denial, there is a scanning and things like that. So you can sort of connect the dot to build that big picture. That's what that is what is shown. So this is to show incident type, say source IP rate of change, destination rate of change. So it's some kind of a decision table we built. If this is there, most likely this is the type of attack. Then this is basically to say distributed denial of service attack. It has to have these kind of characters, low, medium, high, and so on. If it is malware, these characters, remote hijacking attack. Of course, it's not completely foolproof, but it's an attempt to sort of relate these things. This is the kind of attack. Of course, you can say this is just an attack, but we want to have correlation to be precise as much as possible so that appropriate mitigation action. So these are all we tested with some test bed This was a project funded by Department of Energy with Arizona State University, some capabilities from Arizona State. There are some advanced innovators like Professor Vijay Vittal and Professor Raja Ayyanar. They were the people there. Myself from Iowa State. Yeah, we built this thing. In fact, right now, we have the previous project, they were the lead, I was co-PI. Now the current project, I'm leading, they are co-PI. We are utilizing some of these capabilities to build additional capability. The new project is about zero trust, building beyond what we have done. So these things were demonstrated and we published quite a bit data set. Again, here, this is a confusion matrix to show the detection accuracy and other things. Let me just quickly move on. So what I showed was machine learning based anomaly detection is a very powerful thing. And prior to that, I was talking about attack detection and mitigation from a VAMPAC perspective. These are some other techniques broadly used in computer science or cybersecurity. It doesn't matter for grid itself. This is called attack surface reduction technique. So because the attack surface keeps increasing when you do more and more automation, more and more connectivity, and more DER, and also the EVs and the load side, they're all increasing the attack surface. So what we do is one idea is, and the network is inherently deterministic. How do you kind of take it from a deterministic sort of a little bit, introduce some kind of uncertainty so that the adversary have difficulty. So that's where the attack surface reduction, that idea, introduce controlled uncertainty in system operation without causing any adverse effect. That is very key. If we are trying to introduce some uncertainty or confusion, if the system is already experiencing denial of service because of your action, that is not acceptable. So you have to introduce what is called controlled uncertainty. Okay, so that is the main idea. One example is there are different flavors. We have done work on this as well, implemented in our test bed. Randomized network addresses. So let's say this is the control center, gateway at the control center at part of the energy management system. Let's say this is a substation. Maybe I should let me choose this. This is a substation, gateway RTU. This is a control center. Simple example. Actually, this is WAN, but I just want to show. Let's put it this one. This is a substation RTU. This is a control center, gateway. They are communicating through the WAN. Let's say what they have to do it. One simple way is IP hopping. If the adversary sitting somewhere here, they are targeting denial of service attack on this gateway or this RTU. What will happen? You can cause that whole thing to go down, denial of services. So the information exchange doesn't happen. Measurement control never reaches the other side. So what you do is this RTU, these two endpoints, they have pre-agreed way of doing things. Okay, we are going to keep changing our IP addresses randomly. The pool of IP addresses is available, that is known to each other. Instead of one IP address, each one of us, we have 10 addresses, each one of us. You have 10 address, that list is already known. Within that 10, I'm going to randomly choose based on the same seed. You also do the same thing so that you know what I'm going to do, what is my address, I know what is your address. So we keep changing periodically at a fast pace, randomly. So by doing that, the adversary, if they, let's say, get hold of a packet, they see, oh, this is the source address, this is the destination address, I'm going to create a new attack. By the time the address would have changed to something else. So the hopping should be fast enough so that the adversary cannot inject bad packet. Even if they inject some bad packet, maybe one packet may get through by the time next they would have changed. So IP hopping is a proactive technique to sort of reduce the attack surface, evade attack from the adversary. The key there is, the problem is, okay, you don't have a whole lot of address. You have, let's say, 10 address within your subnet, whatever the address space, that's what you can scan or hop around. So then let's say the adversary, I'm going to hit, I know one of the IP address this they are using in the pool because I can look at one packet, this is the IP address. I'm going to keep sending the same packet again and again. Eventually it will hit, right? Eventually, but it won't be a denial of service anymore because most of the time it get lost, but 1 in 10 time it will hit. That's the thing. But if you want to go even beyond port hopping, the number of ports, IP ports are a lot more. It's the thousands, tens of thousand, whatever, 2,000, 32-bit, some are unused ports are there, so much ports are there. You can hop across ports. It's almost very hard for the adversary to create a DOS attack through that means. So IP hopping and port hopping, those things could be done. The other technique, what is highlighted here, is the network route. Like for example, from this substation to control center is going through the wide area communication network. It is using a fixed static path. Instead, if you have redundant paths, keep switching back and forth those paths. It's called path switching. Randomly you switch the path, and by doing that, you minimize the possibility of the DOS attack and impact of those attacks. That is one. The third one is more to do with the grid perspective. Those are more related to cyber networking perspective. Randomized measurements and control. Like for example, these measurements are collected for EMS applications, state estimation or other kinds of applications. So typically redundant measurements are collected. And those more the redundancy, the real principle or the power of MTD, moving target defense, lies with the two things. One is the degree of redundancy, whether in terms of path, whether in terms of IP address, or whether in terms of measurements. Higher the degree, higher the effectiveness, redundancy, right? So then the randomization, those are the two principles. So you take put some additional redundant sensors, right? More measurements than what is needed. Only a random subset will be chosen to actually do the state estimation or anything. But while you are picking that random subset, you need to make sure that the observability is still guaranteed. You can't just take random subset, you lose observability. So again, people have utilized MTD based state estimation. So the attacker perspective, if they think, oh, I'm going to compromise this sensor, few sensor, those two sensor measurement may not be part of the random subset. Once in a while, it may be, most likely it won't be in many cases. If you have sufficiently large redundant measurement. So those kind of techniques can be done, and primarily we have done the first two actually, network level MTD. So that is also illustrated. This is one example, the simple way to, within the test bed we implemented. Two paths are there. If you just static, basically idea static to dynamic, that's the whole idea. So static means they will do a device attack and keep attacking, then you basically switch to another one back and forth switch. It will kind of reduce the attack surface. The last concept I want to introduce is zero trust architecture. This is a hypothetical diagram. In fact, we have a brand new project. That's what Arizona State is part of it. Arizona National Lab and others. So what is the main idea is no implicit trust. Never trust, always verify. That is the principle. So the reason for zero trust, not in the grid, it all started from IT companies actually. Because if you remember the COVID happened, in the past, security is called perimeter security. Everything within your company, perimeter, that means you have firewall. Anything inside the firewall, it's not accessible, it's a perimeter security. And employees are working within the organization, university, students and professors and their researchers, they are working within the organization. There is nothing to go out, nothing coming out. They are all going strictly regulated by your firewall rules. But what has happened now, because of COVID, everyone started working from home. What is your perimeter? Perimeter is the whole world actually. It's all over the place. You can't really define the perimeter. So now people are talking about, okay, don't trust anyone. So never trust, always verify. Then another important thing is lot of insider threat. Insiders, disgruntled employee and others are spies. People are sitting there. They are creating problem because they are already inside the perimeter. So that's where this concept of zero trust came. All these big companies like Microsoft, Google, Apple, everyone, they are big on it. And the NIST has this, what they call framework, 800-207 framework, CTA framework, Department of Defense. They are pushing heavily, DOD, also Department of Homeland Security, and DOE is very much interested. the suitability of zero trust, how we want to do it. Because zero trust, as you can imagine, there is no trust. Let's say to a device and server, they had authentication. They have to keep authenticate every time. The authentication is not valid. The access control policies will be revoked. It has certificates. It has to be revoked and revalidated. It will introduce a lot of overhead, a lot of complexity. The complexity means you lose packet. The packet communication will last or it may get delayed. So one has to really architect, engineer the solution. Oh, you don't want to do these things for every packet, maybe every group of packet, every 5 minutes. So what is the right level of zero trust that is tolerable to achieve feasible implementation in a control system or industrial control system like the grid? That is the real focus of that project, what we are working on. So you can have device level zero trust, network level zero trust, and cloud level cloud level or application level zero trust. So those are things. So I'm going to take really 5 to 6 minutes. This is an important topic. Having we discussed, this is the last topic, the test beds. So I mean, this also I think 2012 or 14 sometime this was published. I think another slide was
2012.
12. So there is a test bed, IEEE transaction smart grid, test bed, CPS security test bed architecture implementation and evaluation. That's the title. So what we articulated there is, okay, everyone want to build test bed. It's not about buying no components and just putting it together. No, you need to architect. It's an engineered solution architect. What is your goal? What is really needed? Whether you want a cyber experiment, or you want to have physical experiment, you want to have a cyber physical experiment. Some of the things what I talked about, you want to have anomaly detection or vulnerability assessment, you want to do impact characterization, you want to study attack defense. There are a whole range of things. Depending upon that, your architecture may be completely different. So one way to do it, the high level architecture is this test bed abstraction. You can think of a cyber physical test bed as a physical layer, communication layer, information and control layer, 3 layers, and well-defined interaction across this layer. Think about, let's say, if you want to build a real test bed with this kind of capability, one can have real-time simulator. You can have an actual physical thing. It may be very hard. I'm just talking from a lab scale environment test bed. Then you have a communication layer. You could have a actual communication protocol depending upon what you want. Then, of course, the information control layer, you can have RTUs, EMS, or some other simulation. So then you instrument attacks and defenses at the cyber layer, the top 2 layers, cyber layer, and you conduct attack defense studies. That's what you do. So the point I want to make here, this is the test bed we built. I have many more slides, but I took it out, which kind of systematically go through what kind of test bed you need, what are the different use cases, like data set generation I talked about. That is one use case. We can do attack defense evaluation more from a control system perspective, or we just want to do vulnerability assessment. If I have vulnerability assessment as my goal, I don't need a physical layer at all. You don't need a physical layer. You need only information control layer and communication layer, because it's a cyber thing, vulnerability assessment. If you want to do just a purely impact characterization, you don't need a cyber layer at all. You just have a physical layer power simulation, create event in your power system simulation as if the attack event happened, like a fault condition, it will do impact characterization. But you want to do a cyber physical as if cyber is causing, there's a timing, what is the system response back and forth, then you need both the cyber and physical. So depending upon the need, it has to be designed. So what we have is the control center, substation, a lot of RTUs, EDU, this things, RTUs there. This is a Siemens RTU, PSYChem-PS. This is the Power TG control center from Siemens. Wide area communication, the actual protocol DNP3, that's what we use it. But there is some kind of WAN emulate more latency and other things. We can do that as well to show how far, how many routers. But within this substation, you have RTU where these devices, relays, PMUs, they are mapped there. And they are also connected to RTDS in one implementation in the past, but a recent implementation with OPAL. So you have a power system model. Let's say I have 30 IEEE 30 bus system. 30 bus system will be running inside the opalati, each bus roughly corresponds to a substation. That substation relays will be mapped to that actual bus thing. That's how this connectivity is established. So obviously, if you have 1,000 bus system, you can't have that many substations, physical machines and physical relays, all those things. So that's why we have maybe dozen or so relays, PMUs, but the rest now we can create what is known as virtual substation. Virtual substations, the scalability is achieved through virtualization. The substation VM together with virtual IEDs and other things, so that you have a realistic topology, 30 bus system with the cyber layer, then the physical thing, then the control center. So in a way, this is a cyber in the loop simulation environment. And then you have the relays and other things. So what you do is here in terms of attacks, that is the environment that we have. There's a picture. What we can do is with this, these are the different experiments. Vulnerability assessment, you can go and look at this relays, PMUs, communication protocol, RTU, and the control center software. You can go and look at various attacks, whether they are there. This doesn't require anything about power system simulation. So vulnerability assessment. So we found some vulnerabilities in Siemens platform. This was 2012, around that time. Somewhere it should be, yeah, it's there. That means the vulnerability was found even before, but it was reported to them. They did publish this in the ICS cert. This was somewhere it will be there. My student Adam Hahn and myself. So what it was showing, it is relevant to some conversation we had today. So these are all systems they already built, Siemens platform. Making them security, that is not easy right away, because they have to re-architect the software both in the RTU side and the control center side. The simplest way to introduce security is bump in the wire, right? Bump in the wire. That means they introduce a proxy device here. They introduce a proxy device. That is some embedded platform. I forgot the name of it. So that will be sitting both sides. Then basically it will provide VPN tunnel between those two things. But the interesting thing is that particular proxy device, it was running on HTTP web server. That was, and web server has a lot of vulnerabilities. My student, he did some reverse engineering and figured out this is what it is doing. Then he looked at the national vulnerability database, what are the well-known vulnerabilities, and he basically made this proxy device to die basically through a DOS or some scripting type attack. So by doing that, what happens? The substation is not able to communicate to the control center. So basically the cyber situational awareness completely cut off. So that's why that vulnerability, there are a couple of other, actually we found 5 or so. We reported to Siemens. Siemens said 3 of them, they themselves heard it from some other lab, or not researchers, but their own R&D lab they have internal. But 2 of them they published. This, I think, severity level 8 or something. This is the Scalens. Scalens S602 version 2. These are the actual platform that were affected. They published this advisory. So one type of research you can do that. It's purely cybersecurity. Nothing you need to know about grid, just the embedded system networking. Then the risk assessment. I talked about risk assessment. The key is you have to have impact. Impact studies require power system simulation and other things. The cyber system, power system, they together integrated as a system. And the cyber layer, you create this attack. Okay, I'm going to trip relay or sequence of relays I'm going to trip. What is the impact it has? Those impacts are quantified. So this is the probability itself. We don't do this calculation here, but it's a impact characterization together with actually creating those attacks. So that is one. The most interesting thing is more complex attack defense evaluations like AGC I talked about. In fact, PNNL collaborate, of course, we developed it. One of my students went back there. Another project, they remotely use our test bed to go through very detailed timing analysis of how the system reacts. Those kind of things, attack defense evaluation of systems from a cyber physical system can be done. But what is shown here is a remedial action scheme. Somebody was saying about 9-bus system. So that is what we use here. The remedial action scheme is a special protection scheme. It is not there everywhere, only for critical part of the network they have. It's a bit expensive and also it's very sensitive timing. It also wide area. It is not a application that relies on control center. You can't send a command to the control center and get response by the time it's too late. It is maybe few hundred or 100 millisecond or 150 millisecond. Then RAS is widely deployed in US grid in different part of the things. In the past, it was a little slow, but there are several RAS schemes or the special protection scheme. So just to give you one idea where this can be shown. So let's say this line and this line and this generator, they are part of the RAS scheme. Let us say attacker creates a tripping attack, false data injection or the data integrity attack to trip a relay. That can be done actually. The actual attack on the DNP3 protocol, we did that to happen. Once this trips, the RAS controller usually as part of its decision logic, what it should do is, okay, this line is off, then this will get overloaded. That means it has to ask this generator to ramp down. That's the normal course of action. But the attacker, as part of the attack vector, what he would have done is not only tripping data integrity attack, he would have caused DOS or the RAS controller. RAS control is not control center, it is part of one of the substation. In DOS, the RAS control is not able to send the command. So the command never reached the generation controller. So it doesn't know what to do. I mean, it was continuously generating at the same output rate. That caused line that this line, whatever that bus number 7, or so the line R2 will see a thermal overload. After a point, it will trip by itself. So it's cascading. R2 is not attacked or anything because of the physical action that led to trip. Then this whole thing isolated. You can see all those voltage collapse, line flow, all those things. So these kind of studies you can do. This kind of systems you said. This is the last slide. Then the real use cases. Ukrainian attack in 2015 that has happened. This is what the scenario there. This was very publicized by NERC. They studied, they published a white paper. This is what happened in Ukraine. Then we took it as a challenge. We implemented, in fact, Professor Vijay Vittal, when he said, he even conveyed to some senior people at PS General Meeting, Iowa State has implemented successfully the Ukrainian attack and the potential mitigation strategies and things like that. This was around 2016, those time frame. So the idea then, as I was telling Gurunath, we hosted Ukrainian people and Black Sea country people to actually show the utility people what has happened, what lessons they can learn from it, how do we go about preventing those kind of things. So anyway, so the point here is this, the IT network, we talked about IT OT, is the control system, the OT network. If you look at this, the substation side, wide area communication, this is the control center. Then on the top, the IT network is there. Once in a while, the engineers, remotely log into the control center and doing various things. Initially, spear phishing email, then some malware got downloaded. There was a reverse channel was set up. Whenever the engineer was remotely logging through the VPN, they were basically recording all those things. VPN credentials were stolen, then the adversary. So this is the IT type of thing. Then they get into the OT side, pre-impact and OT post-impact, two phases. Here, using this VPN credential, they gained access into it. Once they are inside, then they install some malware, disable the keyboard and mouse, then hijack the HMI. Remote HMI is hijacked. Then the operator adversary had operated console in front of him. Then go on, open breaker 1, 2, 3 in one substation, 2 substation, 3 substation, 29 substation, many are distribution, maybe 1 or 2 are transmission substation. Led to this many customers.
It was simultaneous.
Yeah, so the operator is clueless. That's what they told. I also visited Ukraine as part of the study. Some of us we went there. So they said, they were clueless. Then, of course, they also corrupted the server so that the restoration is prolonged. Many of those RTUs, the firmwares are corrupted. They were not responding. They were not establishing the DM. So the lesson here learned is, I guess, many lessons. That is what illustrated as defense. Those are also, in fact, I didn't have a video. We have a video of this whole thing, how we implemented those steps. And part of this one is how effective the NERC compliance, SIP compliance, and other things. We try to map these things. For example, here, the spear phishing, if the users or engineers or the people who are involved, if they are knowledgeable enough IT security knowledge, they would not have clicked those things. Training is one important thing. Of course, NERC has a special criteria into that. Second one, the VPN credentials were harvested. If there were multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication, that step would have been prevented. There was no two-factor authentication, but NERC has a multi-factor authentication built in that thing. Then, of course, here the anomaly detections, they were not there. There are some various kind of malware that were run, the black energy 2 and other things. There nothing was detected. Otherwise, there could have been something happened. Then there was one more. The remote session was hijacked, remote HMI, right? So from a control center, remote HMI is more like a RDP session, remote terminal session. Why would anybody from a control center establish a remote session to outside? That means the firewall was not properly configured. The firewall now has ingress rules for incoming traffic and egress rules for outgoing traffic. The egress rules led to this kind of thing to go. Firewall configuration could have been prevented. So then somebody gained access to into this. Then they trip a relay 1, 2, 3 circuit breaker. That means the idea is to isolate the whole substation from the rest of the grid electrically. That means that generation or the connectivity and other things are lost depending upon the type of substation. So when they are issuing command open, open, open. So if there was a good anomaly detection here and prevention system, initially it would have allowed 1 or 2 tripping. Within short span of time, no operator will issue that many open. So there is a sort of violation of that operating procedure within given include. So anomaly detection could have prevented those. So none of these things were in place at that time. But the next whatever was there at that time does have those mechanisms. It doesn't mean that every company has those things in place, but they were trying to upgrade the compliance to make sure these are accurate. And the other important thing is one thing that was learned in the past, for creating a major blackout, one has to really create attack on a transmission system with the high-end transmission line or the substations and the generators and so on. That was a myth actually. This attack busted that myth. You don't need to even attack transmission system. You can go and create attack on a distribution system with enough number, like 29, 30, you can create the cumulative effect could be as big as the transmission level attack. Because transmission level attacks are generally, transmission systems are generally well protected because they are companies, resourceful companies, where the distribution companies, they are not that rich, they may not have security and so on. Oh, let's not worry about, that's the impression. But cumulatively, they will have the same effect. That's what this illustrated. Okay, so the last slide. So to conclude, the attack surface is continuously increasing and evolving. Adversaries are becoming more and more sophisticated. Again, as I mentioned, AI, that is part of this whole thing. Attacker using AI tools. Cyber attacks are no more low frequency events that risk diagram I showed, likelihood and consequence. They define, that was a NERC report. They define DON NERC, I should say. Cyber attack through a nation state is a high impact, low frequency event. And they classified GMD, geomagnetic disturbance, also at same, once in 10 years, 20 years, like that. But that is no more true, actually. Nation state attacker, they can attack anytime. So it is no more. That's what I want to say. cyber attacks no more low frequency, but they are definitely medium level frequency. Attack frequency and stealthiness are likely to increase. So this slide, I had it, I sort of removed it. It's not just technology alone. It is technology, training people, following best practices and things like that. And of course, there are regulatory things also come into play, depending upon bulk power system, distribution grid different, and also different countries may have different expectation on the compliance, but these three things definitely important. The compliance only provides the baseline security. Actual security is much more than the compliance. Risk-based cybersecurity investment is very important. Randomly throwing resources, I'm upgrading this, upgrading this. You might have said, oh, you have a pulse sensor thing. We invested $1 million to upgrade our infrastructure with cybersecurity, but you left so many holes in the system without fixing them, right? So you need to go through a systematic risk assessment, whether it is qualitative or quantitative, that has to be done. So that is, and based on that, you make investment decisions. AI-driven solution for cybersecurity, I kind of alluded, briefly talked about anomaly detection and mitigation. Of course, you can use it for forensics, and of course, you can use it reinforcement learning. There is also a concept called federated learning, especially different parties, they want to learn from each other, protecting their privacy. They don't want to share the data. Federated learning, those kind of paradigms useful. We have done some work on that as well. Model-driven and data-driven solutions are promising. In the past, mostly model-driven, but AI, a lot of data. If you have good data, data-driven solution also important. Skilled workforce is extremely important. I have usually another bullet. I kind of didn't put it. I should put it here. Industry, university, and government lab partnership extremely important. So the Power Grid Center for Cybersecurity is one such example. The collaboration between Power Grid India and also Indian Institute of Science, and of course building that ecosystem to IITs and NITs. I think that's the right model. That is one of my actually the taglines slide. I made this presentation, this last slide actually in NIT Trichy. I didn't want to emphasize there, so I took it out, but here it is most appropriate. So with that, I would like to thank some of the sponsors over the years. We have multiple projects right now, primarily DOE and NSF, but the recent past, even until last year, DHS project, Department of Defense just ended one project, PCERC, we have had project over the years, EPRC, that is a center at Iowa State, which jump-started our research seed funding. Okay, you can work in cybersecurity. A lot of graduate students, among them, they are listed in the publication. And of course, a lot of things. We do this research, I organize panel, try to share the knowledge and engage those people. That I would like to thank you for your patience. I took a little longer time, but I hope it is worth of your time. I really appreciate the opportunity to visit here and share some of our work and look forward to further collaboration and engagement. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Any questions from the online? We can take it first. The question from the online person.
Any questions from the online audience?
Can you speak here?
Any
Hello.
questions from the online audience? Yes, sir,
Hello.
you're audible.
Yes. I am Swapnil Save, calling from MEC TCL. I have one question. All the IDs are connected with our in SCADA system with a GPS. Okay. So, is there even a possibility that cyber attack from the GPS system it is possible? Is there any possibility for that? Because GPS is connected with satellite all the time.
That is very much possible, sir. That is definitely a plausible attack vector. That means, yeah, GPS spoofing or tampering. Of course, GPS is used in the grid. I'm not sure every IED is connected. Definitely the PMUs. Yeah, I mean, that is, the answer is yes to what you asked. Yeah. Jamming, yes.
Okay. Then we can use any that what we said, any solution on that one, or any how to identification whether from the GPS there is a cyber attack on the system or something is there. Or
I mean, that's
we can use that firewall in the SCADA system also. It is possible.
So these are different type of attack vectors. The firewalls that are used in the SCADA system, whether it is at the substation or control center, they won't necessarily detect because they are meant for network traffic that is on the wired network. Here we are talking about GPS attack on the sort of wireless channel, physical layer detection mechanism that have to be developed based on some deviation and things like that. Like you said, this GPS attack, even for farmers, agriculture. I mean, I come from a state in Iowa. I mean, Iowa is one of the major agriculture state in the United States. So they use a lot of precision agriculture, precision farming. They all rely on GPS. So if somebody does a GPS manipulation, this whole thing, even planting, you can mix up this whole thing. They are in fact studying. So that is a common attack vector that could be disrupt so many other infrastructures. But there has to be different solution than what the SCADA thinks. So it has to be more physical layer solution to detect those things and mitigate. One possible mitigation would be like this, like our computers and mobile, smartphone, all those things we have. There is something called NTP, Network Time Protocol. So network time protocol, there is a sort of cloud. I mean, there is a system clock. I mean, NIST and others, they have a precision clock, but that information is available through internet, through NTP, Network Time Protocol. If that is utilized, then one can sort of rely that as a fallback mechanism, not solely rely on GPS. I mean, GPS has two things. One is the timing, another is the location, right? There are two aspects.
Yes.
But just for time purpose, NTP could be one possible thing. I think just a minute. Here, Dr. Kaliyappan is there from CPRI. He has something to say. Yeah.
One proper reference, we can go for a PTP mechanism, sir. Precision time protocol, where the security is ensured. IEEE 61588.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's basically like a NTP, Network Time Protocol. There is another protocol IEEE has developed. That's what he's. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. Oh. Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. I am Anushka Tamrakar and also doing similar kind of project under Professor Puneet. Sir, under your anomaly detection model, I have one query. Like, firstly, you checked for the correlation among the features and then you check for the similarity. Right, sir?
Yeah, for the correlation, yeah, similarity.
Yeah. So, like, for the similarity, how are you doing it? I didn't understand that.
So similarity, I mean, in terms of possibly, like, for example, the time, in terms of like the features, right? It could be the source address or it could be the destination address. Some example I showed you, they have same source address. Some other case there is a so essentially similarity across those features, right? That's what that is going to look at actually from the alerts that are coming from different alert sensors, the ADS sensors.
Okay. So, is there any metric used?
I mean, metric used is to test the detection accuracy, how accurately it detected, is the distributed denial of service attack or scanning attacks. I mean, the correlation accuracy, that's what the metric. The other
Okay.
metric was more like a latency metric, more from a performance metric, whether such solution can be deployed. One important thing here also, if it doesn't have enough information enough confidence to declare what is this, the alert correlation, it can seek additional information from those individual sensors. Because they send alert, could you also send some raw data or other information from individual sensors to sort of clarify or ascertain what actually happened. So it's not just one way the alert is going and correlation happens. If the correlation is not conclusive, it can ask for additional query for subsequent information. Yeah.
Yeah, understood, sir. Thank
And one more thing I wanted to mention, this case, if those, in this case, the DER I showed, if it is like, let's say grid, right, a substation and all, the substation and control center, they are all coming under one utility control, then this setup works as it is what I described. But let's say go to DER, this morning also, Vivek, you made some presentation, somebody owns one part of DER, the other is another community solar, there is some kind of aggregator, they pool all those resources together. Then you want to protect the privacy. There, the alert correlation, the way to do it using the federated learning. Federated learning is a mechanism like that was popularized by Google actually. Whatever we have, this speech recognition system, Siri or other things. So initially they introduced the federated learning. Earlier now when you speak, it won't understand actually. It had a lot of mistakes it used to make. They perfected this because they install those agents, speech recognition agent, they learn something, they push their model back to the cloud, coming from tens of thousands or millions of such agents. Then they build a aggregated model. You can Indian speaking English, British speaking English, and American speaking Spanish, different people speaking English. All those things now somehow captured through the local agents. Those variations are aggregated. Then the aggregated model sent back to the agents again as in round two. Then again it keep on going back and forth, multiple iteration, it gets refined. Why this is important? The model gets refined, then eventually right now the speech recognition software pretty accurate. You can speak, it will follow most of the time. But the key is none of our data was sent to them. Only the model parameter, user data privacy was preserved. So that is a major success. Similar concept could be applied, especially for DER. The alert correlation, those kind of things, what I'm talking about, you can also fit into the federated learning framework. Yeah.
you. Yes. Thank you.
Any other question? Before we go to some written comments, anybody online have a question?
There was a question he has posted in the chat box. I'll read out. Smart meters are using
You can come here. Come here.
the question is the smart meters are using GPRS with SIM cards for communication. What security measures should be implemented to protect data transmission and prevent unauthorized access?
It's a great question. Maybe you should answer because I haven't worked on smart meters. I know what is smart metering, AMI, all those things. Security and privacy, they are important there. In my view, they are not critical control system like the way we are talking. If you just tamper 1 meter or few meters or even few hundred meters, the chances of, I mean, you can data privacy could be there. You can alter the load a little bit. The local utility may sort of make suboptimal decisions and things like that. But in terms of grid level impact, pretty limited. But your question is about GPRS, those things, how secure they are. Do you have any idea?
Actually, we have a standard IEC 62056, 5-3, 6-2, where it talks about security mechanism. That is lowest level, low level, high level security mechanism. Those things meter has to comply apart from other standards. So there it clearly says authentication, encryption, all the things are is coming to that. As per that should be.
Yeah, the important thing there also, there is no real timing issues. You can afford to have solutions. They are little bit time consuming because you are collecting smart meter data every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes. It's not every second or so. So
One
it's
more,
not issue.
one more point. So one more point is one of the best feature of the smart meter is remote disconnect and reconnect. So that if someone is able to compromise it, hackers or some intruder, then simultaneously you remove massive of smart meters from the distribution side of distribution system. That will be I mean, it will create a stability problem in the distribution system, which will affect the distribution also. As I said, our Professor Manimaran sir earlier.
Yeah, you need to compromise sufficiently large number in order to really shake the grid. Yeah, I think. And if you know how to hack and the same vulnerability is there, the same vendor is there, there is a what you call common mode failure. Okay, I know how to hack it. There are so many meters of that kind. You can go and do it. In fact, that is the case. Even the solar farm, wind, solar panel, all those things. The vendors, manufacturers, they monitor the solar panels, the panel performance. It's a sort of, they are not asset owner, but they get to monitor. The hacker gets into the vendor server. They can literally, control those things and they can create a massive thing similar to what you said. So it's called IoT, Internet of Things, in the energy context. Industrial Internet of Things, how do you secure? A smart meter also in some sense the IoT.
Yeah, more vulnerable.
Yeah. Any other question before we close the session? Maybe let's give.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
You were telling about confuse the adversary, like and
Yeah. Moving target defense.
Yeah,
That is the
and
term.
you have experimented in a test bed also how multiple network paths or others.
Yep.
But okay, it makes sense that we can confuse the adversary, but all the entire infrastructure is not under the control. Say, for example, if you're talking about power grid itself, the networking infrastructure will not be under the control of the power grid. So how do we choose the path or randomize the network path?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, the network infrastructure is not, if the network provider provide that capability, let's say the future next generation routers provide that capability. The earlier routers are regular routers. Now they are saying SDN, software defined network, SDN routers. The SDN routers also have MTD capabilities. And as a asset owner, you can install SDN enabled MTD routers. Then you can sort of say this is you can program it.
Some kind of an overlay on top of.
If infrastructure is already there, then you have to build overlay. But if you are building new infrastructure,
Hardly in today's world, it hardly makes
they are not
sense
there.
to build a new
The only way to build on the existing infrastructure is through overlays. You have some specialized routers having this SDN and across those overlay network you implement.
For an experimental study in the lab, I can do it. Because everything end to end, I have the control. But in real world.
Anything related to infrastructure, whether it is a grid, internet, anything you want to implement, because they are all already there.
Because otherwise, if the infrastructure also belongs to me, then everything can be brought down to an isolated zone, then the chances of external adversary getting itself is very difficult. But since I am using a public infrastructure.
And not only public infrastructure, even if it is your own infrastructure, everything under your control, still overlay makes sense. Because you can't go and you can't afford to go and change everything everywhere. The easiest solution is like similar to bumping the wire, build a overlay network where those critical things will have those.
That's the only way.
That's a common strategy people use. That's a good point. But somebody is building a brand new network, then you clean slate. You can have every router with that capability.
The desire is to have a clean slate approach, but will not be.
But they are talking about digital substation, right? Yes. New substation they are building.
So that is only one part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, but the point is even moving target defense. It doesn't need to be end-to-end everywhere. You can have some portion moving target, some other not moving target. That's perfect.
That is perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Some at the network level. Exactly.
Idea is to confuse.
Some at the network level, some could be at the measurement level, some could be some substation level, doesn't matter.
Store.
Yeah. Yeah,
Using-
yep,
Correct.
that's correct. Yeah, please.
Solar rooftop has some effect on this cycle.
Yeah, I mean, they are IoT, Internet of Things. It's similar to what you have the like smart meter, but this is a solar generation. Those inverters and other things are there, and they are not highly secure. And enough those devices because they are all participating in the energy market. They are prosumers.
Wireless also.
Yeah, so if they are the compromise enough number, they will have effect for sure.
So CEA is changing the regulation.
Okay.
Maybe Right, makes changes
In the meter regulations.
regulations.
So are they incorporating cybersecurity features? Okay, that makes sense.
Already do that.
Okay,
They are metering the meter.
sure.
I don't know what are the means they are. They are trying to make.
They're going to give a regulation.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it is the same thing what I said before. Yeah, some years, 10 years back, they were saying, oh, bulk power transmission system only. If we attack, that will have major impact. Distribution, no, it's not a big deal. Ukrainian attack is simply illustrated. Now we are saying, oh, you have to have it distribution or transmission. Below and what happened? No, you going to compromise so many homes. I think it is. But
Because the smart meter can be the originator.
Yeah. I mean, because if they are all highly integrated, not only that, you just compromise, that could provide as a entry point for you to laterally move into your rest of the system. That could be
Put
possible.
the wire.
But
Put insertion into the wire.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, somebody else, yeah, please, sir.
You mentioned you and your students have worked with DNP3.
Yep.
So there are so many control networks like Modbus, Profibus.
Yep.
They themselves have vulnerabilities. So, but there was a move at some point in time to replace all these proprietary buses with some standard bus. Is there something like that is happening, or all these different buses are still exist?
They're all there. They're all there. These are all, there is so much effort. In fact, even to make DNP3 secure DNP3 specifications are there. The vendors are not having solutions. The people are still having the old DNP3. The only common mode is let's go to the bump it the wire. So this, the proxy VPN, that kind of thing. So, the problem is the whole ecosystem. It's not like now people don't have talent or idea, but you have to build. The vendor has to buy. I mean, standards have to be developed. The vendor has to build the product. The utilities have to acquire it and replace it. So it's a long process. Somewhere it gets short circuited unless there is a compliance regulation. You must do it. You must replace all these things with this. Then they will do it. Otherwise, it's all over the place. That's the reality.
huge investment is.
I mean, or the government, somebody gives, okay, there is a funding available. But what is that public-private partnership? We will put this if you implement such thing. Yeah. In fact, when President Obama was there, they had a what they call American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. This is basically the infrastructure bill during his time. The smart grid, the whole concept of smart grid was launched at that time. So like 6 or 7 billion from the federal funds. Of course, the infrastructure bill itself is just 700 or so many billion, but the grid itself is 7 billion or something. 7 or 10 billion, equally the 50% has to come from utilities or whoever it is. So total 20 billion, majority of the distribution grid automation, the smart meters, all those things were launched there. Now 70% of the household in the United States, 71% has smart meters. And the point is the original motivation for smart meter was demand response program. Depending upon the price and other things, you can use your appliance and things like that. Not many people use that way, maybe some places like that, but more to do the outage management. If something happens, OMS, right, some fault happens, they can exactly pinpoint out which feeder, which segment of the line it is there, they can send the crew right away. So people are using utility for other application. But demand response, maybe some places, but not super popular. to the extent it was promised. Same thing with the PMU. On the transmission grid, we are going to deploy PMU, we are going to collect all this data for wide area monitoring, control application. They are doing monitoring, but not a whole lot of control yet. So what I'm saying is, when that 5-year project, 4-year project, they launched all of them. After that, if there is no fund, they all die down. So there is success, there is no doubt, but it's not to the extent one would be expected. Yeah, exactly. Any other question? Yeah.
Excellent lecture, sir. Informative and, extremely happy to attend this.
Thank you. Thanks for your kind words, sir. Thank you.
So you had a virtual substation more desperate. So how do you replicate the physical IEDs vulnerabilities into the virtual IEDs?
That's a good question. Virtual IEDs, we don't mimic create a vulnerability. The actual physical IEDs, when we are actually, let's say you have a 30 bus system, 12 IEDs, 12 substations, we have the IEDs physical, let's say, relays or PME. The other 18 of them, they are virtual. When we are doing attack defense studies, we will only target on the physical only. The other one, from a system dynamics perspective, it will be part of it. But because the real vulnerability is not there. This is a real device, a real protocol. I know how to hack, which bit to flip, that we will target that. The attack vectors will be launched only on this. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Good question. Yes.
You spoke about recreating the Ukrainian attack on. So just could you throw a bit more light? As in, you had to replicate the same set of softwares. That was
Yeah, it's a approximation. So there is a document by NERC and Cementech. Those are the two Cementech worked with NERC to create what happened in Ukraine. And if you go to IEEE general meeting those days, can this happen in the United States? That is what the discussion, panel discussion. Then how effective this NERC compliance to reflect this kind of things happen. So they published what you call this is called NERC ISAC, Information Sharing Analysis Center. It is under NERC. So it is like a CERT kind of thing for utilities. When they see any vulnerability, they report to them. And when they get any threat intelligence from API, they sanitize and distribute to all those utilities they are members. Of course, universities, you can't be a member to get those threat intelligence, but you can get, they have some classification. Traffic light, white, blue, green, something like colors are there actually, right? So white means everyone can access. Others are now only classified. So this is a white thing that list that publication was made, what actually happened in Ukraine attack. So we studied, they used that cyber kill chain model because some of these people visited there, they studied it, tried to analyze the data that were there. That is how they prepared because they wanted to help the United States and other Western countries. So then we studied those things. Why can't we create that? So we took it as a challenge. So we made an approximation. It's not like every step, but pretty close approximation. Then we also said what could have been possible mitigation. That's where let's go and look at as a means to validate NERC criteria, two-factor authentication. Let's implement two-factor. Let's do anomaly detection, behavioral based intrusion detection, operator no won't do this one. All those things we implemented to showcase this stuff. Then the Ukrainian people, they came 2016 or 17 timeframe as a study tour. USAID, that agency is having trouble now. They worked with some other agency, NERUC, there is one called National Association of Rural Cooperatives. It is a sort of altogether national organization. They reached out, okay, we want to have, we are hosting those people. They went to some national labs, week-long study tour. Then they wanted to really show some actual test bed beyond just talking about NERC, NIST document and other things. So then they came to know that we have such a facility. Then the USAID person came, then I showed those capabilities and said, oh, we are really interested. Can we have 2 days at your place? So then we kind of went through this. Then around that, we also talked about best practices. not just ourselves, then I invited the utility companies, Mid-American, and Alliant Energy, National Lab like Pacific Northwest, Arga National, what are the best practice? So that holistically, they can gain access, and also talking about educational program from the workforce development. So they went there. Then subsequently, they invited me. I'm a USA because they were building these things. Some experts, operators and people, including the NERC vice president. When I talked to him, he was there often, met with the president of Ukraine now because they're talking about the Ukraine and also these are the things. So it was a interesting thing. There, the workshop I went was it's more like again sharing knowledge, helping them, that kind of thing. It was nothing practical there. But it is an approximation, I would say. You can't create exactly as it is, but it's a use case approximation. But they liked it. In fact, when they saw it, when the light was going off, trip relay 1, 2, 3, in our test bed that all those bulbs are there, they're connected to relays, and this is the light will go off. They're just, just shocked. I mean, those people, some of them now they do it, but when it is happening, as if they were immersed actually. Then we went through step by step. This could have been there, this could have been there, because they were going back to sort of establish a regulation within their own environment to prevent such things. Those are utility commission professionals. Those are the people who came here. Anyway, sorry, I took a long time to answer that question.
Okay, there's interest of time to close it. On behalf of PS Student Branch Chapter and Powergrid Center of Excellence, we thank Professor Manimaran for coming over here and delivering such a wonderful talk. So,
Also say about electrical engineering.
yeah, sorry, I missed it. Sorry. I also thank the Electrical Engineering Department for providing the opportunity and infrastructure to host this talk. So, I request Professor Gurunath to come and hand over a moment to Professor Manimaran. The lights. Oh, you need a photo.
Yeah, we can have photo, group photo.
Slide first.
So, yes.
Please come, we can take one group picture.
Yes.
At least I deserve to take a picture with you all. Please.